The comedian Steve Coogan is absolutely right that in calling for the return of the hostages, desperately calling for the return of the hostages, taking hostages is an evil, childish, surreptitious, sneaky, cowardly action. It's very simple. It's not. It's not noble. It's not manly. It's not good. It's sneaky. It's snaky. So, calling for the return of the hostages is the number one priority. Calling at the same time for the health support aid to the Palestinian community in Gaza, I don't think that's in any way inconsistent with support for the hostages and support for Israel. Criticising the Netanyahu government is perfectly reasonable. Anyway, Coogan, I think, gets it right. Steve Coogan gets it right. And he says it goes without saying that what Hamas did is evil beyond imagination. It was horrific and brutal. He says it's no way inconsistent to express grave concern for the lives and welfare of innocent Palestinian civilians at the same time. And I believe he's joined the letter issued by Artists For Palestine UK that was signed by Tilda Swinton, Charles Dance, Miriam Margolyes, Maxine Peake, and 2,000 others demanding that governments end their military and political support for Israel's actions. It talks about not only tolerating war crimes but aiding and abetting them and calling for an immediate ceasefire. But an immediate ceasefire is not possible unless it involves the return of the hostages. So some of the people who have signed that letter have not made that clear. And I think if you call for a ceasefire, but not for the release of the hostages, then you are aiding and abetting Hamas, and that is unacceptable. If you speak out against the bombing of the hospital in Gaza, which of course everyone should do, and at the same time immediately point the finger of blame, and to say this is done by Israel. Well, that's certainly not certain. Channel 4 produced question marks. The BBC has since pulled back on its statement, and Rishi Sunak has announced in the House of Commons that this was almost certainly from investigation by British authorities done by a misfiring rocket from Islamic Jihad. But to point that out and then say that the hospital would have been in no danger, would not have been torched had there been no siege, that I think is reasonable. Netanyahu's response to the problem, his solution, I think is absolutely the wrong solution. I think rather than solving a problem, he's alienating world opinion, and he is not necessarily going to produce the desired result. But you know, it's all about qualification, and I don't deny for 1 minute Israel's right to defend itself. I do deny Israel's right to invade another territory. And Israel's movement into the Golan Heights, for example, in the past, Israel's movement into Gaza, in the past, Israel's movement into the West Bank, in the past, these are questionable. And if you go back to the early announcement of the State of Israel, the first war in 1948, really we're in a this is a continuous war from 1948, and it needs a solution. And now is as much a time as any when a solution might be possible. And uh, we've got to remember, you've got to identify facts as they are. And one of those is to identify Hamas as a terrorist organization, as indeed you should equally identify the Irgun as a terrorist organization, and then move on from there. If you start playing around with definitions, you get into some sort of moral vacuum, and words have no meaning. Words need a meaning.